Welcome to the Wrestling Realm Presents Championship Culture. I'm Brandon the Guy, and remember, every bout has a story. Now, before we get into today's topic, just want to remind you of a couple quick things. Did you know that you can watch all of the Wrestling Realm content anytime just by going to youtube.com/the Wrestling Realm? Don't forget to follow us on all social media platforms, which include Instagram, X, and Facebook, just by using @Wrestling Realm. Don't forget to like and subscribe and engage us in the conversation. You can also stream and download all of our audio content on Anchor, Stitcher, Podbean, Pocket Cast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. You can watch us on our Twitch channel by using @The Wrestling Realm. And if you decided that you want to go to a sporting event, a live event, and want to save a couple dollars, why not go to SeatGeek.com and use the code Wrestling Realm? It'll save you $20 off of anything that's $50 or more. And if you see the price of tickets now, I don't think you can get a ticket for anything less than $50. So why not go ahead to SeatGeek.com, purchase a ticket, and they have this neat thing where they show you the arena, actually where you'll be sitting. Click on SeatGeek, and don't forget to use the code Wrestling Realm to save you $20 on anything over $50 or more. So, as you can see, we're talking about making history. And before we talk about making history, I just want to say this. The WWE has had some great tournaments. They've had some forgettable tournaments. But it seemed like with this tournament to crown the new NXT Women's Champion, it seemed like they made the perfect blend of who's who within WWE that might be, an established superstar, but they also had a good mix of the NXT originals. So within this tournament, it was in the first round, you saw Tamina Snuka versus Paige, an original versus an NXT newcomer. Bayley and Alicia Fox, same thing. Sasha Banks and Summer Rae, two NXT originals. Emma and Oksana. Now, looking at this, because of the way that he who named shall not be named, but we probably can name him now, booked, I thought Summer Rae would be the winner because she fit the mold of what they wanted on the main roster at the time. But the second round saw Paige versus Alicia Fox, and then it saw Summer Rae versus Emma. Still thinking that Summer Rae is going to win, but when the finals came down to Emma and Paige, Triple H went with a newcomer. He went with a woman that really hadn't been known here in the United States, comes from a family of wrestling, and it was a different type of woman wrestler that won. And it was a delayed taping, like the tournament took place, the finals, but then they didn't air until July of that year, and Paige was the first champion. She went almost a whole year, all the way to April 24th, where she was stripped of the title. And she was only stripped because she went to Monday Night Raw. We know how that story went. She won the Divas title the night after WrestleMania. And so is history. But there was a second tournament, and the second tournament actually kind of shook things up a little bit, because now we had a prelude to Bayley and Sasha in the first round, Layla and Natalya, Alexa Bliss and Alicia Fox, and then we had Charlotte Flair and Emma. Emma's back in the game. She's trying it again, right? But didn't last long, because the second round wound up being Sasha versus Natalya, and then Alexa Bliss versus Charlotte. And then you could tell where we were going with this, because it was the next generation of stars, being Charlotte and Natalya, having that quote-unquote dream match before we could have that dream match. And it was, two wrestling families, their proteges coming together, or their offsprings, whatever you want to call it. It was, Charlotte versus Natalya. A story that I think that we didn't really get a full breath on, but of course, this was the first coordination of Charlotte Flair being NXT Women's Champion. And when you think about these champions, it was almost at a time where the eyes were on the product, because the women were doing something different in NXT than they were on the main roster. Yes, we had the Divas title, but the NXT Women's title just felt a little different. But before I go any further, let's take a look at that belt, because the belt itself is a whole different design than what we were used to. We had the butterfly design with the Divas logo that a lot of people didn't like, but with the same color scheme on the NXT Women's title. Let's take a look at it. So there were only a few women to hold this iteration of the belt. Paige held it for 273 days, or if you say 300 if you count the time that she won it versus what was actually the time it was aired. Charlotte held it for 258 days. Sasha Banks for 191. Bayley held it for 223. And then, of course, we know Asuka was the last one to hold that belt, and that's when the belt got changed to a different version. So her reign with that belt was 510 days or 522, whichever one you want to count. You count the time that she held it or the time that they aired on TV. And these women, if you look at what they've done, they are kind of pioneers in the women division. And of course, you got to add a Becky Lynch into it, and there's other people that can be added. But at this time, Paige, Charlotte, Sasha Banks, Bayley, Asuka, any of those combinations were 5-star matches. They had a lot of rivalries that translated not only from NXT, that worked on SmackDown, worked on Raw. So when I say they're making history, these women started their foundation in NXT. And if you go back and watch any of these combinations, Bayley and Sasha, any of their matches were, match of the year candidates, and one of them actually was. And if you go back and watch, it's just they were on a different level. It was like they had something to prove. So these women really made history and continue to make history. Let's talk about what Sasha Banks or Mercedes Moné is doing right now. Can't have a conversation with women wrestling without saying that. Charlotte Flair, like her, love her, or hate her, you gotta have you talk about women's wrestling, you got to. Bayley has reinvigorated herself, changed her character, and now she's kind of pseudo manager to the current women's champion. But she's still Bayley. You can't take anything away from her. Asuka, win or lose, she's still in the conversation. Wrestlers have went on record as saying she's probably the best wrestler in the world. She's probably one of the best to do it. And it shows in her work. I'm just excited about how she keeps evolving and she keeps things different. And I still want to see an Asuka match. Paige, we could say, injury kind of stagnated her and kind of made her a little bit, she doesn't wrestle the same. I just hope that she stays healthy, and I hope she didn't come back too soon or come back at the wrong time or came back in the wrong company. But I'm just going to say, if you go back and look at Paige's first run in WWE, even when she was trying to do the Absolution thing, it was a nice fit for her. The Kabuki Warriors were kind of like let's try to keep her on TV. But she introduced them to the main roster, which was good at the time. But let's talk about why I have the belt. Every belt has a story, so let's hear this one. So when I was going through collecting belts and just, trying to see what's next, because of my love for the NXT women's division, I said, I gotta get the belt. I have version 2 of this, but I didn't have version 1. So I found a maker, and this belt is actually 2mm zinc. It's very thin, but it's a good showpiece. I knew I wouldn't carry it to a show. I knew I probably wouldn't say, have it in the background that often. I just wanted a belt to have it because to kind of pay homage, because if in the chance I meet Paige or Bayley or Sasha or any of the women that held this iteration of the belt, they'd probably be the ones that I would try to get to sign it. Of course, you want Bayley to sign the SmackDown belt, but imagine, having a Bayley signature on the original NXT one. So watching this actually made me pay attention to these women early on, and it got me excited about them on the main roster because I remember what they could do, and I was always adamant about, are we going to run that back? Because it seems like no matter the combination, when you run one of the matches back, let's look at Sasha Banks and Charlotte. They had a huge run on Raw that they traded the belts back and forth. Each one was great. I'll never forget watching Sasha put Charlotte in the bank statement through like the barricade on Monday Night Raw, and I was like, whoa, that was different. Every match just felt a little different, and every match hit a little different. So of course, when it came time for me to add another belt to the collection, I said, you know what, let me go ahead and get this one done. And I said it earlier, the pink motif on this didn't look bad. The Divas belt I know people have a problem with, but silver and pink actually look pretty good on that belt. So there you have it. The story behind this belt, yes, I'm missing the stone. I was trying to keep it covered. Don't laugh at me. That's what happens sometimes when you have a lot of stones on belts. But I will tell you this. If you ever want to see a good women's match, go back and watch some of the time when this belt was in rotation. I'm going to recommend any combination of Sasha and Bayley first, Asuka and Bayley second, because I think the Sasha and Bayley matches were slightly better because they had better chemistry. Asuka was so dominant in a lot of them. It even made you feel like Bayley was going to win a couple times when she fought Asuka. But we know Asuka had that dominant reign, so any matches with her. And then you could tell Charlotte was understanding who she was. So there you have it. The women that are making history, made history, and continue to, write their own history because it started with this belt. Remember, every belt has a story, and I can't wait to hear yours.